Okay, when we look at exchange of property, we look at basically two situations. The first one is an involuntary disposition, and the second one is a basket sale of land and building. And they're both interesting from a tax perspective, because when you have an involuntary disposition, which is, think of fire, theft, expropriation, things like that, it's possible that if you have insurance proceeds, you will have a capital gain and possibly recapture. And that will be taxable in the year. On the other side, when we have a basket sale of land and building, the issue is different. We have an income piece, and we have a capital piece, right? So essentially you can think of the land and the building. So the building will possibly have an income piece in the term of terminal loss or possibly recapture, but we're really on the loss side. And the land will be capital. And there's going to be some bias on the part of the taxpayer in terms of how to allocate the proceeds of disposition. So that will be interesting, and how the Act deals with that. And we're going to look at this one in class, so we'll leave that out of the video for now and look at it basically by looking at an example in class. And the problem that we have to do. Involuntary disposition, though, is it's interesting, but it's also incredibly rare. So it's very likely that even if you go into tax and you have a career in tax, you'll never ever see this. So the question is, why study it? Right? If it's so rare, why on earth are we introducing it in the class in Tax 1? And the answer is because it kind of is the principles of it that underlie what is known as a Section 85 rollover. And you will meet this in your next tax class, and you'll come to absolutely love it, I'm sure. But this is really important, because this is basically the Income Tax Act, our answer to the question, what does the Income Tax Act do when transactions happen, but nothing really, the economics of it, the economic circumstances, I'll say, don't really change. So with Section 85 rollover, it's when someone starts a business and puts their assets into the business. Really, that kind of looks like a sale from one taxpayer to the other. And the Act says, well, yeah, but really it's just going from one taxpayer to the other. If we let the Act just act as it would, or let the rules apply as they would otherwise, there'll be tax to pay when really nothing happened. And so this is kind of the key of what we're learning here in a much simpler setting than in a Section 85 rollover. Okay, so that's why we're doing it. And now, I think the best way to do it, or the way that I want to do it in this video, is to look at exercise 2. So this is exercise 8.2 in your textbook. And basically, if we look at this and walk through this, I think we'll have a good sense of how everything works, and then we'll do the two problems in class, or you'll prepare them ahead and we'll do them in class, and I think we should have some understanding of how this works. The intuition of it, all along the way we want to build our intuition while we learn how the mechanics of it work. And so it can get kind of complicated, but we always want to come back and just check our intuition to make sure that it's not being offended along the way. And if it is, that we understand why. So here's the scenario, and we'll draw a little timeline here. So we'll put 2010 turning into 2011, 2011 turning into 2012, and 2012 turning into 2013, and 2013 turning into 2014. Okay, and so you can see the problem here. I won't read all of it, but basically what happens is we have a fire. So a big event in 2010, and it destroys some computer equipment. Nothing happens in 2011. Then in 2012, the insurance company finally says, okay, you can have some money. So they give us the money. Then we still don't go out and buy anything new. A whole 24 months, it tells us here, 24 months pass, and finally we go out and buy new equipment. Okay, so that's the scenario. And then, of course, all along the way here, because we still needed all this, we are renting up until the time that we buy the new equipment. Okay, so that's the scenario. And again, the nitpicky rules would say, okay, we have to check this. Is this lag okay? Is a 24-month lag okay? And it turns out it is. So the replacement property still will apply. But what we should do is rely on everything we've learned so far, and that is what happens if there are no replacement property rules. So before we learn the new, let's just check the old and see what it is that these people are getting relief from. So we'll start out with no relief. Okay, so this is kind of the baseline scenario with no replacement property rules. Well, we know what happens. Beginning of 2010, we have in Class 10, we're doing a CCA schedule. Right, it tells us it's Class 10. The opening balance is 17,150. So I take CCA on that at 30%. I get 5,145. That leaves 12,005. Okay, so then I come into 2011 with that opening balance. I take CCA of 3601 to get to 8404. Okay, so that's my opening balance for 2012. Then in 2012, because that's when the insurance proceeds happened, I have a disposition. I finally got some money. Now, it's not technically a sale, but this is at the point at which the sale is transacted. So again, with no help, we're going to take out the lower of cost and proceeds from the UCC pool. And so the lower of cost and proceeds is the $50 that we get from the insurance company. So we get $50,000. We then figure out how much CCA do we have left, and lo and behold, or UCC, sorry, and lo and behold, we have a negative number. Okay, so we look at that and we go, oh, well, we know what to do with that. That is recapture. So I recapture that amount into income. My UCC balance is 0. But we want to star this, right? Because this is income. Pay tax on that. Not only that, we also have, at the same time, a capital gain, right? Because our taxable capital gain is going to be, I said this was the proceeds. The proceeds is 60. It's not 50. They paid 60. Okay, so proceeds is 60 minus the 50 that was the cost. That's 10. Multiply that by a half, and we have a $5,000 capital gain to pay tax on. Okay, so again, income. So we have $46,596 included in our income that year. And the point of this is that this happened to them. This fire came along. We're assuming anyway that they didn't set it, and so this seems a bit unfair that they're having to pay tax when really all they're trying to do is make themselves whole after this involuntary disposition. Okay, so how do the replacement property rules help? Oh, actually, let's carry on into the next year first so that we have our baseline. So next year, so nothing happens in 2013. Okay, so we'll just continue along here. 2013, nothing happens. Then in 2014, they go out and they buy a new asset, and it doesn't go in the same class because the government has done things and said you can put this kind of computer in. So we have these additions. You can go into class 50, which has a much better 55% rate. So we do our UCC schedule that we're just so good at doing now. Take out the 30, take out half of it. So the amount available for CCA is 35. Take CCA on that, and at 55 you get 19,250. Add back the half year rule that we took out, and we get to a grand balance of $50,000.750. Okay, so that's our opening balance for 2015 as we go forward. Okay, so now, but again, what this is all about is this income inclusion. Will the replacement property rules do anything to help them with that? And indeed they will. So this is a place where the taxpayer is sort of being helped. We'll go back here and we'll now compare this. So with the replacement property rules, here's how it goes. So it goes the same, actually, all the way up to the 8404. So we won't bother doing that all again. Then the disposition comes along, and again, it was going to be lower of costs and proceeds. And what the replacement property rules will let you do is to say reduce the proceeds. So this is a deeming situation by the lesser of two things. So those two things are the recapture and the replacement cost. Okay, so the recapture is this 41 and change number, and the replacement cost is 70. So the recapture is the amount. So 50 minus 41596 gives us, lo and behold, our proceeds are going to be 8404. Okay, so not surprisingly, that gets us to UCC of 0, and and that gives us a missing recapture, right? So we won't put the number there, but there's no recapture there. So one problem solved. Okay, what about the gain? So the taxable capital gain in this case is going to be calculated this way. It is equal to 1/2 of the lesser of two numbers. A, the real gain, and B, the proceeds of disposition minus the replacement cost. Okay, well, the proceeds of disposition in our case is what? 50, and the replacement cost is 70. So that's a negative number, so that goes to 0, and so 0 is the taxable capital gain. Okay, so we've gotten rid of it. Isn't that wonderful? But of course, this is not about saying, oh, you'll never have to pay tax on this thing that happened to you economically. It's just we're going to allow you to defer it. So this is the key piece of what we're doing. So it's easy to see, okay, yeah, they can come up with these numbers to get this to be deferred. But how does it get handled going forward? And here's where the clincher comes in, okay? And hopefully this works for your intuition. Okay, so what we'll do is when we go into, so nothing happens in 2013, again, when we go into 2014, when it comes time to add to the UCC pool, what we're going to do is we're going to reduce this. So what we're doing is we're saying we're going to reduce what goes in the pool. That's saying you have less to deduct through CCA in the future. And how much? Well, by the amount deferred. So that's the gain and the recapture. Okay, so what goes into the class? Well, what goes into the class is 70. I'll just drop the thousands digits. 70 minus 10 minus 41.596, and I will go back to the thousands. 18,404. Okay, so 18,404 comes into the pool, and now we just roll back into our what we know how to do so well, our CCA schedules. Take out the half. That's going to leave, 9,202. Take 55% of that, and you get 5,061. Put back the 9,202. So I put a negative around that, and you get 13,343. Okay, so let me just shrink this down so not that much, so we can have a look at it. Hopefully you can still see this okay, but so we can kind of get a picture of the whole thing. What we've done here is the whole point of this was that we had these income inclusions that happened to us, and it didn't seem quite fair that we'd have to pay tax. And so what happens is now we have much less, when you compare these numbers, we have much less to deduct from our income in future years. And so that's how this income inclusion is being deferred to the future through the reduction of the UCC that we have available. Okay, so hopefully that works for your intuition. If it doesn't, we'll hammer it again more in class, and we'll leave it at that. Thanks.